Bernie Sanders has a brand new plan in order to empower workers. So now, this plan uh, would, in its most basic telling, right, would allow for workers to own the companies that they work for. So now let me give you some details here. So the plan would have all publicly traded companies, as well as private companies, with more than $100 million dollars in revenue to give workers at least 45% of the seats on corporate boards. That's nearly half. That is stronger than Elizabeth Warren, which is, of course, her plan was about 40% on corporate boards. And so, again, this is incredibly strong. Let me give you more details here. The plan would also require companies to issue a portion of stock holdings to a fund controlled by workers. These worker controlled shares, called Democratic Employee Ownership Funds, would give employees a percentage of dividends paid out by the corporation. So that's in addition to any, uh, basically pay compensation that they get for actually doing the work. So just like the stockholders, because they are stockholders, they'd get dividends in the company while they also work there. That's awesome. More. But first, let me give you a quote here from Peter Gowan, Senior Policy Associate at the Democracy Collaborative. Now, they worked with the Sanders campaign on this proposal, and he said this: what we want is democracy in the workplace, so the decisions aren't all being made by a tiny number of people. And so that's why these two things are really important. Uh, so here's a result of putting workers on the board and actually having them benefit from the corporation doing better. You'd have stronger businesses and more loyal employees. Again, if you have an employee that has a say in its business and having a stake in the business as a shareholder, well, then of course they would do their best to ensure that the company grows and prospers. Why? Because they get more of it. The healthier the company is, and the more growth and success that it achieves, the more the workers get a share of that. And so it incentivizes workers to do better. That's look to me that's a no-brainer. But no one on corporate America seems to have figured that one out. Now there's more. Sanders also proposes more small businesses in the form of a $500 million bank for employees who want to buy or start their own firms, and encourage the creation of worker ownership centers to help employees manage their own companies. So here you have a possible Sanders administration, encouraging the creation of new small businesses and helping fund those small businesses. Again, that's really good. Now, Sanders also offered a sweeping set of antitrust policies to also help small business, including something called a bright line that would ban mergers of companies with too much market share, which would increase competition. And so that would prevent monopolies like we see in, of course, news media. Now, right now, we have incredible consolidation of news media. You have six companies that basically control all of what we see and hear on cable TV. That's not encouraging. That's actually disastrous. And so, especially when it comes to actual news and politics, that's why you see, MSNBC, CNN, CNBC, all the corporate news basically reflect the establishment. So now, there's more. Sanders' plan would also repeal the 2017 tax cuts for corporations, which lowered the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%. Sanders would also ban stock buybacks, which we've seen record amounts since the Trump tax cuts were put into effect, um, and would also give workers the right to buy a company if it goes up for sale, is closing, or moves overseas. Wow. So say, for example, there's been a lot of companies that decided they're going to move overseas, right? Um, you've had Carrier moving to Mexico. You had Harley Davidson moving over to, I can't quite remember where, to be honest, that they were moving to, but they were moving out of, overseas as well, citing the trade war mostly from Donald Trump. And so, if we had something like this, where workers have about 20% percent stock in the company at least, well, these workers could use that to buy out the company themselves and keep it in America. That would be awesome. So, again, hugely empowering workers and ironically would keep more jobs in the country. Now, there's more. One more piece of this proposal has to do with corporate mergers. Again, I talked about consolidation of media, right? Now, Sanders, his plan would reestablish market shares as the determining factor in approving or rejecting mergers and would make that factor retroactive. So, meaning, if you're a company that wants to go through a merger, you're a large corporation, say, Viacom and someone else wants to merge, right? Well, they would have to go through a market share determination, right? So since we already know that there's so much media consolidation at this point, that merger would get rejected. But wait, what if you already have a merger? For example, Disney and Marvel, right? So now Disney owns Marvel at this point. Well, under Sanders' administration, they would go back retroactively and determine whether or not it would have too much market share. So if there's so much market share, and that's of course is a big thing that stops, diversification, right? Competition. They would undo the merger, retroactive, undo it. That's incredibly strong. Now, interestingly enough, you would think the business community would hate this idea, right? No. Matt Stoller, an antitrust expert with the Open Markets Institute, actually said this, quote, Bernie's coming up with a progressive platform to address monopolies, but it's actually a pro-business platform. Pro-business. That's not what you're going to hear on Fox News. It's not what you're going to hear on CNBC. It's not what you're going to hear on CNN. Pro-business. But hey, it actually is pro-small business, not pro-national, international large corporation or multinational corporation. Now, let me go to another piece of what Stoller says. He said business people are exerting the pressure on the FTC for them to change things because there are many who feel that their companies have been squashed by monopolistic entities. Well, and they would be correct. So giant multinational corporations, they will not like this, but small businesses will benefit greatly from a lot of these proposals. Small businesses, workers, and consumers. This helps create competition. And so, at the end of the day, this is an excellent progressive policy proposal. Bernie Sanders, again, goes big and shows that he is still a force to be reckoned with, especially when it comes to detailed transformative policy. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.